Hi guys, welcome back to BS Rugby. I'm delighted to be joined by Ben from Rock and Roll Rugby to discuss another defeat for Wales, but this time a little bit better. Wales 18, the Springboks 23 down at the Principality Stadium. Ben, welcome to the channel again. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, really good, thanks, mate. And yeah, like you said, disappointing Saturday, but yeah, I think we took a lot more from Saturday than we did from the week before.
Absolutely, I think we did. Just before we get into it, make sure to subscribe here on BS Rugby, and of course, head over to Ben's channel, subscribe to Rock and Roll Rugby. Link will be in the description down below. Let's have a chat about the game then. Of course, Wales, as I said, losing late on to Malcolm Marx's try, and we're going to have a look at some parts of the game where we felt that maybe Wales did well, and areas that we can certainly look to improve on. Straight after the game, quickly, what was your immediate reaction after the game? How did you feel? Did you feel like a missed opportunity, or did you feel, actually, that's not a bad performance, that's something that we can build on?
I think up to the 70th minute, if you'd have told me that we'd have been leading for the entirety of the game up to the 70th minute, I would have bitten your hand off at the opportunity, just looking back at the game, to have gone in at halftime leading, you've got to have thought from that point, the boys must know that there's an opportunity here. The rain was hammering down, that the ball was greasy. It was one of those games where whoever asserted themselves in the best way was going to take the victory. And I think Wales did a really good job of that in large chunks of this game. But yeah, in the last 10 minutes, the wheels really did fall off. The discipline, again, I'm sure we'll mention it as we go through the video. It was just something that was continued throughout. I think key decisions in key areas, once again, let us down ever so slightly. But I think on the whole, I think we are quite entitled to say that we can feel disappointed that we didn't win that game. And it was there for the taking. We had a few opportunities where not only could we have taken points, but we missed opportunity, where tries were sort of there on the table. But I think as a collective group, the way that we bounced back from New Zealand is something you have to take your hat off. And my overwhelming response to that game is only positive, really, because the players stood up. There was a lot of players retained in that game. There were a few reintroduced. But I think the players that took that hiding from New Zealand last week, they stood up to be counted. And I'm sure we'll mention a few of the individual performances, but I think as a team, I think we've got to feel proud of the boys. They did a superb job, and just a little bit unfortunate that we couldn't get it across the line right at the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think we can be proud of the effort the boys put in. Obviously, South Africa and New Zealand are the two best sides in the world. Of course, South Africa are just coming off a Lions successful tour. And don't forget, a couple of years ago, they were lifting the World Cup. So they're a very, very good side. They play quite simple rugby, but they stick to it, and it works very, very well. And one of the things they were very good at was at the breakdown, and something that we knew before the game going into this one. That's an area they're going to be targeting. They're going to bring players off the bench who'll be able to have an impact at the breakdown. And I just wanted to highlight a few situations from the game. So I'm going to bring a couple up that I think will be quite interesting. Apologies that they're a little bit blurry, but this is from early on, just before half time. So both teams have a yellow card. And what the tactics simply was from the Springboks was Jenkins loves the box kick. We learned that very quickly in this game, and it was something they were doing. They would send up the box kick, the ball would go high. Quite often, they really wouldn't challenge all that much in the air. They'd wait for the Welsh player to come down, and then they'd get on top of him. And as you can see from this image here, you've got Louis Rees-Zammit has won the ball. Mapimpi has gone in and made the tackle. Straight away, Khaleesi is right on him. Straight on him, straight over the ball. Etzebeth is there in support. While it's taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Welsh players are there, but not really doing anything. And that was the big frustration for me throughout the game, was just the speed that this South African team could get over the ball. And then the other example I wanted to show was this one. And this is really late on in the game. This is really, really late on, as you can see highlighted in the top left. It's nearly the end of the game. 20 points to 18 for the Springboks, and the Springboks actually win a penalty from this, and it's Malcolm Marx who came off the bench and was an absolute nightmare. against us, and he was just able to get over the ball so much. And I think that the Springboks, full credit to them, really used that box kick so effectively all game. It was a tactic that they used, and with the weather being the way that it was, the ball was slippery. Of course, the roof had to be open because of COVID regulations. I was so impressed by them. My question to you really is then, where did it go wrong in the breakdown? Was it our lack of ability to get there in time, maybe the lack of support, or is it just that the Springboks are that good at it?
I think you can't take away from how good. I think Khaleesi had one of his best games in a Springbok jersey for a number of games now. I think Kwagga Smith, there's been talk everywhere across social media how that's his best game he's ever played for South Africa. And I think you just cannot underestimate how good South Africa are over the ball. Malcolm Marx, this is not a one-off. If you watch South Africa week in, week out, Malcolm Marx does this for fun, and that's what he's there for. That's why he's more of an impact player now, as opposed to a starter. From a Wales perspective, I think there'll be people watching this now who coach at grassroots level, who coach at school level, and it's something you're always told, or as a player, and you always tell as a coach, is that when you hit the deck, your presentation of the ball, get the ball as far away from the opposition as you possibly can. And in that last still you showed there with Adam Beard, that ball is so close to him that it's just inviting the South Africans in to steal. And I think with players like Adam Beard, who have got those massive levers, really they need to be driving those hips up off the floor as much as they can and getting that long presenter, as what it's more traditionally known as, get that long presenting, get that ball as far away from the opposition as you can. Because, yeah, they're still going to try and turn it over, but because they've got so far to reach for the ball, you're more likely to win a penalty for a player going off their feet or for a player diving over. So that straight away. But it also buys the attack. It also buys the attacking side a little bit of extra time, and I think that's what Wales seem to need desperately. Whenever we seem to hit the breakdown, it always seemed like there was that 1 or 2 second delay. Because, as we all saw when we were watching the views, when we were watching it on TV, you can see the man with the ball presenting it. Whereas with South Africa, that transition from the man hitting the floor to the clear out coming in is almost instantaneous. So it almost seemed like we're still a little bit disjointed in our attack, because there's some players, and like you saw there, Louis Rees-Zammit has gone up for a ball, he's hit the deck, and there's still players stood off him. Ellis Jenkins is the one that we can probably see this making the most impetus to get in there. Thomas Williams is on his heels. He doesn't really know what to do. He doesn't know whether to take Mapimpi or Khaleesi. But you watch, with the instance then later on, Marx and Khaleesi, they're straight in there. And there's just no hesitance whatsoever. And by that point, you look at the position Marx is in there. He's got the perfect tripod position. His hands are on the ball. His legs are nice and spread apart. He's always winning that ball. So I think from a continuum from last week, I think it's just really, really slow from us to get to the breakdown. And then sometimes when we get in it, it's not a lot of impetus. It's two men, sort of battering heads with a South African. Whereas there was one clear out I saw from Etzebeth, and I genuinely, even just watching it on TV, I was like, oh, because they just clear out with such ferocity, and there just seems to be that lack of desire to speed the ball up. There were times where we did it well, but there were times where that concentration lapsed, and we struggled a little bit to get that continuity with the ball.
I just realised I've muted myself. That's really good, isn't it? There we go. Yeah, I agree. I think just the intensity that the Springboks showed to get over the ball, and it just seemed as if there was a lot more cohesion in their team. They were going in pods. They knew, this is my role, I'm clearing out. And it still feels like with Wales that we're trying to work that out. And to me, the way I would describe this Wales team right now is a confused team. I think we're confused between what we're trying to do. Are we trying to spread the ball out, or are we trying to keep it compact? Are we trying to beat teams up top, or are we going to play a kicking game, or are we going to try and counter attack? What are we going to try and do? And for me, I'm still a little bit confused with what we're trying to achieve. Are we going to say, all right, Pivac played like this in the Scarlets, we're going to back his philosophy, we're going to go with it, we're going to say, do you know what, if we have to take the rough with the smooth, we're going to do that, so we're going to back this style of play? Because this team just doesn't have an identity. You look at Scotland against Australia, they threw the ball about. It's just how they're going to play. You just accept that's the way they're going to play. You look with England, they're going to bully teams up top. Ireland seems to have found a new identity now where they're looking to offload, use their big ball carriers, but still looking to offload. And we seemed a little bit confused in that area. And especially at the breakdown, I thought we really struggled. And some of the stats from the game just highlight that. These are in the dark blue shade, it is Wales, and in the pink shade, it is the Springboks. You can see there, Rucks won 69 first, but 89 for the Springboks. Rucks lost 5 first, but 3 for the Springboks. Breakdown steals 6 to the 2 of them. Our ruck speed wasn't bad throughout the game at all, but still, the Springboks pretty much had the upper hand in that area. And I think it's something that the likes of Josh Navidi not being there, Justin Tipperick, people like that who would be at the breakdown, who would be causing a menace. Although we're going to talk about one who had a phenomenal game later on for us, I do think we missed that presence in the breakdown where even if they just slow the ball for that 1 second to allow us to reset, to allow us to get back into positions, I felt we just lost that so much. And I think it's something that we're going to have to try and work on over the next few games. Obviously, Fiji is going to be a little bit different, but the Australia game, Australia want to throw the ball about. They want to get the ball out quick, and they're going to pose a different challenge. There were quite a few big moments in the game. The first one was the Springboks yellow card. Now, this was quite an interesting one. I have brought it up on your screen. Again, apologies about it being blurry. I've just screen grabbed them from the game itself. What simply happens, originally, we were looking at a potential high tackle, dangerous tackle, but the ref cleared it. But as you can see, Nick Tompkins has ran through to try and gather the chip ball, and the South African prop has come through and completely blocked him. For me, straight yellow card, no question marks about it. I assume you're in agreement with that, Ben.
Yeah, I think if you looked at the build-up to that, and obviously we looked at because just before that, they were trying to pick up a high tackle on Tompkins as well, where Oxenchair had gone to take the ball. Tompkins had caught it around his head height, and I'll be honest, like it looked like a lazy, like swinging arm tackle trying to get Tompkins down. I think he just wanted a bit of a break, really, and he thought, you know what, if I stick a shoulder to Tompkins, but I can have 10 minutes. But no, like it's one of the things that the Springboks try and do as best as possible, and you look at anybody that does deep analysis on the Springboks, they do as much as they can, as often as they can. You know, I think, back in my old man's days, they would have called it some wisdom and skullduggery at the breakdown and things like that. But they do what they can to slow balls down, to slow teams down. And it was just one of those things. It was a poor timing. You see that half a dozen times a game, but he just made it a little bit too obvious to the referee. And I can see exactly what he's trying to do. If he can get in Tompkins' way, he's either going to step out of his way or he's going to run straight into him. And as long as he's maintained that line, the referee is always going to favour the guy that's turning around because he's entitled to hold his ground. But he made it a little bit too obvious that he was trying to take Tompkins out, and in all seriousness, I know I said he was looking for a break. Please don't hate me in the comments because it was only a joke. But no, I think it was one of those where Wales seemed to be starting to gain momentum, and it was just one of those that take one for the team then, if you will, where he just thought, I'll try it, see if I can get away with it. If I can't, I don't, and it's not the end of the world. But yeah, it was a turning point for Wales, especially with a full 10 minutes before that halftime whistle to have a go with 14 men on the pitch.
Yeah, we had the option at that moment in the game, didn't we, where we'd either go for the post or we went for the corner. And I'm pretty sure we went for the corner at that point. And I felt like, just take the points, just, at least ensure that you start in this time of yellow card with some points. And yeah, South Africa went down the other end and got 3 points themselves. And it's those moments in games that are so important, the understanding that, like, game management, we knew it was going to be tight. We didn't expect it to be as tight as it was. But at that moment in the game, it's like, right, you've got the man advantage, assert your dominance, take the points, and then come back. And although the line-out functioned really well this week, I thought that was a major improvement. And we will chat about the scrum in a little bit. But I just thought that was the wrong decision in that situation. But we also got our own yellow card. Rhys Carré sent to the bin after a number of penalties from us. Discipline was an issue, wasn't it, on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think for me, it was one of those where I don't think it was necessarily penalties through lack of discipline. I just think South Africa in so many, it was sort of isolated chunks, but they put us under so much pressure. The speed they were picking and carrying at, catching men offside. The fact that we had out and out jacklers on the field that were looking to get in there and win that ball. I do think though, and I think it was the case for both sides, the referee was extremely harsh on moving away from the tackle. I think the one instance where I think it was Ellis Jenkins himself
Yeah, he was
actually
trying to roll, wasn't he? He was trying to
was
move. He was
pinned.
trying to show that he was.
And I think like if you would have counted in real time, it was probably about 2 seconds. Now I know that the directive is that they need to get out of the way of the ball as soon as possible. But I think in a couple of cases the referee was a little bit too strict on it, which it did hinder the flow of the game at times, and it was never going to be a classic. The roof was open, the rain was pouring down. It was a real slugfest at points during the game, and that only sort of hindered Wales then because South Africa went to the game that they know so well. They big men coming around the corner at pace, hitting those rucks hard and trying to force the errors and the penalties, which subsequently. Well, I thought up to that point, Rhys Carey was having a really good game. I thought he'd put himself around the park really well. At that point, he wasn't being totally dominated at scrum time, so I would have taken that for the first 35 minutes. But then obviously he got the yellow card, and what happened subsequently from that there was that it sort of leveled the playing field up, and we sort of lost that opportunity then to take assertive edge with that one-man advantage.
Yeah, I think the scrum, we have to talk about it. Obviously, it did really begin to struggle by the end of the game, whether that be in fitness, whether that be in that the Springboks had just come off the Rugby Championship, although a disappointing one. They did get a win over the All Blacks in there, and the Springboks probably are the best scrummaging nation in the world. And I don't really know where the blame lies. I'm going to be totally honest. Even though I am an Ospreys fan, I've never been the biggest fan of Thomas Francis as a scrummager. Rhys Carey, is okay. Obviously, Ryan Elias, I'm not sure on him really at this level, whether he's quite at this level. Ken Owens today announced that he's been let go from the camp. He's going to play no further part in this Autumn Nations series. Where do you think the problem lies at the scrum? Or once again, was it just the case that the South African team is that good that we were going to get overpowered in that area?
Yeah, I think the one thing you've got to say is, that the South African forwards pack is an extremely well coached unit, and they use so much of their players from inside the training camp. I know Thomas du Toit did a lot of analysis during the World Cup for them, especially looking at scrum time alongside the forwards coach. From my perspective, looking in, it just seems like Wales are always frightened after that initial hit. They just seem to be sat on their heels, waiting for sides to come at them. It doesn't seem like we're going chasing after sides after the initial hit, and especially with the new directives that are coming in now that sort of, until that ball is put in, both sides have got to remain as sturdy as possible, and they've got very little gap from that initial hit. But for me, it's all about that second shove. And if you look at South Africa as a unit, you can see, if you watch really closely, if you're a nerd like me watching the forwards, if you watch, there's a very small dip. It's not a lot, but it's just a small dip of maybe around a third or a half an inch, where all as a unit, they drop their height down and explode out. And I think on a couple of occasions, you could definitely see that, where, sometimes you hear the calls on the commentary when you hear "and now," and that's where sides are dropping and sinking their hips down nice and low and exploding up and through. Now, for Wales at the moment, is it down to a fact that we're lacking a little bit in bulk? If you look at the South Africans, Etzebeth on his own was probably the weight of probably Adam Beard and someone else. So, he's a massive, massive unit, and to have that sort of weight coming behind through your front row, it's only going to be beneficial to you. But I think if you look, you had Oxenche, Bongi Mbonambi, and you had Trevor Nyakane in the first half. Second half, they bring on Vincent Koch, Malcolm Marks, and Stephen Kitsoff, and they were all World Cup winners. All six of them were involved in our World Cup triumph. So, whereas us, on the other hand, in the second half, we brought on Wyn Jones, who was a Lion, and to be honest, in my opinion, I think we need to start looking at Wyn Jones as our serious first choice option at the moment. But we brought on Will Griff-John, who thoroughly deserving of his first cap and been playing really well. He played well at Sale last year, but it just seems, that sort of inexperience at the moment. Now, the one thing you've got to look at is that forward pack would have learned an incredible amount about themselves on Saturday. That is by no mean feat one of the hardest jobs to do, is to go out and try and pull one over on the South Africans at scrum time. And in a couple of cases, it looked like we had parity, but especially towards the end, you bring on the players like that, and we were always going to drop off, especially after what had been such an intense battle.
Yeah, I agree. I think you look at their bench, and what people forget is this team has been, the South African team, under, well, not Rassie anymore, but under the regime that they have, it's, they've been together since I want to say 2017, maybe 2018, that kind of time. Won a World Cup together, very successful, beaten the All Blacks over the last couple of years a few times. This Wales team under Pivac, he's been there for a year and a half during the COVID times, during a difficult time for him. I think we're having an identity crisis as well within the squad and within the way we want to play. So I do think that it's going to take time, but I do think there's some fundamentals that we are struggling with. And the other thing with the scrum, obviously I'm not a forward, so I can't speak too much on it. But it seems like once one team gets the dominance in the scrum, that's in the ref's mind. Straight away, that's in the ref's mind. And maybe on a 50-50 call or something like that, he's like, well, that team's dominant. It can't be them who are breaking any laws. And I think that really did struggle with this. Will Griff-John came on, as you said, and first scrum that he does, I think he does nothing wrong. Scrum goes down and it goes to the Springboks. And that may be because of that dominance at the scrum. And let's have a chat then about an interesting decision in the game. Mapimbi's disallowed try now. I've seen a lot of debate about this online. I've seen a lot of videos on it, a lot of false videos, if I may say so myself. And we're going to debate this. When they were looking at the TMO, I thought originally they were going to look for a potential knock-on from the ball that comes back. What was your initial reaction when the TMO was looking at it? Were you thinking this is a certain try?
I'll be honest with you, mate. I missed the box kick. I'd turned around and I'd missed the box. I'd missed the box kick that went up. Watching the replay back though, I got to be honest, I couldn't see what was wrong with it initially, and it wasn't until I got home. I was watching it on the big screen. So when I got home and watched it again, there is the slightest, and I mean the slightest movement from Marks. And the only thing that I've seen that people have compared it to, and there was one guy that sort of stood up in this conversation. If you take your mind back to 2018, I think it was, when New Zealand played England at Twickenham, Underhill scored that absolute incredible try on his own, and they brought it back for Courtney Laws with 1 foot being offside. Marks was a lot more than that, and there is that initial movement, which is what effectively has ended up in it being brought back. For me, it doesn't have a massive effect on what happens next, but if you look at it in terms of the players that are in front of the ball have to make an effort to either drop back or at least wait until the kicking player has advanced to in front. Marks does take a couple of steps forward, unfortunately, until Lacanioan pulls on the reins and sort of drags him back to help get him onside. But yeah, that's all it takes is that one player to show that he's not willing to make that retreat initially, even though he does eventually. But yeah, it's tiny, tiny margins. And it would have been a lovely try, great draw and give from Etzebeth and Mapimbi with a straight run in. But yeah, it was harsh, but it was the right call by the letter of the law.
Yeah, I'm going to show a couple of stills that just back up this. So as you can see on your screen here now, the players in yellow are currently onside. So you've got Khaleesi, I think Mapimbi, and I'm not too sure who the guy on the bottom left of the screen is. Kobus Reinach has come on at scrum half, so he is the kicker. So anyone in front of him is now offside. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players offside. Now, Malcolm Marks is behind Lucanio Am. So they currently now, once this kick has happened, they must retreat. Everyone retreats bar one, which is Malcolm Marks. As you can see there, he's in a forward movement in the red. They're still all offside, but in the next still, which I don't have, I just realised, they do retreat back. Lucanio pulls back Vincent Koch and Stephen Kitsoff and then grabs Malcolm Marks. But Malcolm Marks is offside by the slightest of margins. Now, I've seen a video go around of this, and simply the guy does not highlight the fact that Malcolm Marks has gone forward. He blurs him out so that you can't see that Malcolm Marks gone offside. But when you watch the footage back, he does go offside. So I just wanted to clear that up, that he did go offside and it was the correct decision. I would have been very frustrated as a Welshman if that had gone against us, for instance, but it's the letter of the law and that's how it goes. But the day would come to an end with a Springboks try, a drive-in maul, something that I actually thought we defended so well against all that evening. I thought our timing of engagement on these mauls was exceptional, but it just seemed like we ran a little bit out of steam near the end of the game. Did you get that impression that we were just so exhausted from the physical battle that we just couldn't hold them out any longer?
Yeah, I think in that still, just that you show there, I think it tells you everything you need to know. You've got players standing out because they don't want to see anybody peeling off the outside. You've got 4 or 5 guys engaged, but they're in a straight line, so there's no depth to it. So, you know, it's like almost trying to say, like in a tug of war, you've just got one guy pulling from the back. Whereas, you know, the South Africans, you look at that arrowhead position they've got, look at the body position, especially Koch there and on the far right, the shot just behind Mostert. That leg drive that he's got there is incredible. Whereas you look at Adam Beard, he's basically stood upright because he's the man that's trying to go in and win that ball. I think it was just one of those things that we didn't seem sure whether we wanted to get up and compete or whether we just wanted to nullify the drive. And I think when we did try and nullify the drive, we did a really good job of it. You know, we stopped that ball at source. But once that maul got moving, I knew as soon as that maul got moving forward and I could see the positions the Wales were in, it was try time all day long. And it was just a case of Malcolm Marks steering the ship in the right direction and just dropping over the line. But yeah, it was gutting to see because, like I said, up until at that point, we were ahead. And I think that if, you know, we'd have managed to get out of that situation, you know, collapse them all, I think we'd have backed our defence, you know, and we showed at key times during the game that we were fine dealing with their attack down in our 22, you know. They didn't really look like breaking us from a line break that often. I think there was one example where Dialende and Lucanio linked up together and made a small line break under a penalty advantage. But other than that, they didn't seem to threaten us that much in terms of defence. And I think that was one massive positive we took away, is that we could back ourselves in those tight situations. But yeah, our maul defence there is just simply not good enough. We're fanned across the maul. We're like trying to wrap around the sides, whereas we really should be concentrating on getting in, getting low, and trying to push that maul back, or at least try and stop it.
Yeah, it's a tough one to take, isn't it? And as you said, once that momentum starts to go, it's very difficult to stop it. And I was doing a watch along here on the channel, and I just knew once it got going, I was like, oh, here we go. And South Africa and Australia have a tendency to steal it from us at the death, which is not too enjoyable. Curtly Beale coming to town in a couple of weeks may re-jog a few painful memories. Let's have a talk about some of the positives. And I think one player that really stood out for me was this man, Ellis Jenkins. Wow, what a performance. This is him from 2-3 years ago against the Springboks, where he got that injury, out for 2-3 years, has come back to Cardiff Rugby. This season has been absolutely exceptional and really stood up. And not only stood up in his performance, but in his leadership, because he took over the captaincy late on. Talk to me about Ellis Jenkins. Talk to me about your undying love for him.
Oh, do you want my blue and black tinted specs on, or should I take them off and put my red specs on for this? No, I think you cannot take away from how good he was in that game. You know, we talked about his turnover ability. You know, we only made 2 turnovers in the game, and both of them were from Ellis Jenkins. I think just his presence around the field, he's so clever when it comes to those breakdowns. I was watching it on the replay yesterday. If you watch his movements prior to that Jackal turnover in our 22, He watches 3 rucks beforehand, doesn't get involved, just make sure that the players have made the tackle. Wales have put one man in to compete. And if Ellis Jenkins doesn't need to go in there, he's not going in there. But he senses an opportunity. South Africa attack. They get a little bit disjointed because I think it was Oxenche. He took like an extra step to the left, which lost his inside support runner. And Ellis Jenkins thought, this is my chance here. I'm going in on this ball. The intercept he made down in the 22, he read the play so well. He came up off that defensive line. He knew he didn't have to make the tackle because the pass was always coming, and he makes that intercept there. But just his presence around the pitch was so much more noticeable on Saturday because I think he's got that confidence back now. He's got his mojo back. And like you said, 3 years ago, he suffered a horrific injury. I was down at the stadium when the injury happened, and I can just remember, because it was quite close to where we were sat, just seeing him absolutely in agony on the floor and knowing that it was definitely not good. And I don't think any of us anticipated that it was going to be as long a road to recovery as it was for him, but fair play to him for his resilience and his determination. Like you said, he's been back for Cardiff Rugby and doing exactly what we knew him for before. That clever, sort of not going into absolutely every breakdown, trying to turn it over, but picking the ones where he knows that he can make a difference. And I think that was key on Saturday, especially in those moments where we were under intense amounts of pressure deep in the 22. But yeah, and I was going to say, if you didn't mention it, I was going to say, in the absence, the fact they took Jonathan Davies off, to me, speaks volumes that perhaps they're not the most confident that he is the correct option moving forward. And in the absence of Alan Wynne-Jones, with the Six Nations coming up, who captains the side, And I think for Ellis to be out of the mix for 3 years, come back in, and then be selected to captain the side in the absence of Jonathan Davies, I think that really opens the door, And as long as he can keep himself fit, and as long as he can stay in this level of form, I think he's definitely one to watch then come Six Nations time. Could potentially, if we went down the route of like what Scotland have done in recent times, could be a co-captain going into that Six Nations campaign. But obviously moving forward as well to the World Cup in 2023, he's sort of building just as he'd want to be, just in time for that World Cup in 23. But what an individual performance. We talked about Basham last week, and I think Basham was good again on Saturday, but Ellis just took it to that next level again and really did a job for us.
Yeah, I thought he was absolutely fantastic. One moment I enjoyed where the ref gave the penalty to Wales, and the ref was explaining why he'd made that decision, and Ellis was the captain, and Ellis Jenkins just turns around to the ref and is like, yeah, I agree with you. I think that's right. Yeah, which I quite enjoyed, and I don't quite think that the Springboks enjoyed that. But let's have a look at some of his stats from the game. Meters made 18, passes 10, carries 4. 8 tackles made, 0 missed, giving him a tackle success rate of 100%. And as Ben pointed out, 2 turnovers won, the only 2 that Wales got all evening. Finally, I just want to touch upon a couple of points. I think we have to talk about the Liam Williams incident with a fan on the pitch. Glad to say that fan has now been banned from the Principality for life, all for a £20 bet. What an idiot. For me personally, I thought we were going to score from that situation. I don't think you can blame the security that much. If you've ever been down to the Principality, it's quite an open stadium, really, by the pitch. It's quite low. It's just one step over a tiny little fence and you are over. So I don't want to dwell too much on that. But apart from that, and apart from this opportunity for Louis Rees-Zammit in the first half, where we took an advantage quickly, we didn't really look like scoring, did we? And that still remains a concern for us, is that we seem to be able to put a few nice phases together, but then we run out of ideas, or Bigger tries a kick or something like that, and it doesn't quite work. So this lack of creativity is massively hampering us, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if Wales had been watching some of the analysis videos on there, but it was one of those things. I could see the attack pattern the Wales were going for. South Africa, in terms of their first phase defence, they rely heavily on Lukhanyo and DLND. They are the rocks of that central midfield. And at times, from first phase, I could see exactly what Wales were trying to do. if you looked at it, Bigger had the ball and he had a pod of 3 or 4 guys outside him, all running at Dialende and Am's channel. There's simply one aim that they were trying to do, is to take both of those out of the game. If they can remove those two out of the equation, the defensive line loses somewhat of its structure, whether it's Am that's made the tackle and Dialende's gone in to clear out, or even if it's one of the Welsh guys was trying to pin him down to the floor or something, just to take him out of the game for a few seconds. That's when South Africa become disjointed. So I could see from first phase attack, that was exactly what we were trying to do. Take them out of the game and then build from there. I don't think that we took into account that Dwayne Vermeulen is probably one of the best defensive organisers in the world. And if you looked at so many occasions on Saturday, if you're watching out for these small things, you can see that Dwayne Vermeulen is pointing, he's pulling, he's explaining where people need to be and when. And I think we just struggled to break that defensive line down. The 2 breaks that we did get, we'll talk about the Louis Rees-Zammit one first. It was just one of those that you didn't see where the break was coming from, but then all of a sudden we've created a 2-on-1 on the outside. And that's exactly what I think Wales were looking for, is those opportunities where we've managed to suck enough defenders in and then to create that sort of space on the outside for the likes of Louis Rees, who I thought, he took his opportunities really well, and the step back inside, he had to do it to make sure that he was going to get at least close to the line. But when you've got 2 or 3 big South Africans coming across, he's always going into touch there. So nothing to blame on Louis Rees for that one there. Maybe there was a call for a tackle in the air on the crossfield kick. I think Mapimpi was certainly eager to sort of claim that tackle. But again, minimal. But other than that, it didn't seem like we had a great idea. And I think that came to what we talked off very first in this video, was we weren't presenting the ball cleanly. So Thomas Williams had to go digging for it. And then if he had gone digging for it, the South African defensive line was reset. So we've gone to Bigger for a high kick. And the back 3 of South Africa are one of the most organised off the high kicks that you could imagine, especially when you pull Francois Steyn. What is it this year with Southern Hemisphere sides bringing back these old names? Francois Steyn, Mornay Steyn. But he Curtly Beale played for Scotland yesterday. I reckon we get Shane Williams on the phone for the weekend. Get Shane Williams on the blower. It's a year for comebacks. So
Adam Jones in the front row to sort the scrum out.
Yeah, Adam Jones in the front row. Get Gethin Jenkins down out to the management box. Just get him in the front row and get it sorted. But no, I think that we lack a little bit of direction in attack, and I don't know whether that's down to personnel or whether that's down to what our game plan is to not try and play fancy rugby and throw the ball around for 10 or 12 phases until we run out of ideas. Try 1 or 2 phases. If nothing's happening, stick a ball up in the air and try and compete for it. So yeah, Stephen Jones and the backs have definitely got some work to look at. I think personally there needs to be some reshuffling of personnel. I think Tompkins played well and he looked sharp when he got the ball in his hands. I genuinely think there needs to be a strong advert put out there for someone to take over that 13 jersey for the Fiji game. And if they have a good game, then potentially, they could be in the mix then for the Australia game, because nothing against Jonathan Davis, but I don't think he fits the style that we're looking to play. He did fit it perfectly down at the Scarlets, but it just seems at the minute that there's like that little bit of disjointed continuity between that sort of central of our midfield and the wide outside. Josh Adams had to come looking in for work, and that was something that seemed to be quite visible, was that he was looking for that inside pass off lineouts, and that was something
that became. Sorry to cut you. Do you think that became too repetitive? Because I feel like it was what we were always trying to do, and the Springboks must be like, oh, I wonder what's coming up next. There's Josh Adams. Oh, he's got the ball again. It felt a little bit like that, didn't it?
It felt a little bit like a magic trick, If you're going to do a magic trick, you're not going to show them exactly how you do it. But Ryan Elias seemed to be looking almost at Josh Adams. He took the ball off one line out, and his eyes were fixed on him. And I was like, well, we know exactly where you're going. But yeah, I think we need to see personnel changes myself. I know there was talks earlier on today that Owen Lane could be coming back into the fold. Does that mean he's coming back in to replace someone? I think the back 3 should pretty much stay as it is. So perhaps he's played a couple of games for Cardiff Rugby at 13. Perhaps, give him a run out against Fiji. Fiji picked up a win against Spain on the weekend, and I've heard that Joshua Tuisova came off the bench and caused absolute havoc. So you're going to need solidity in that midfield regardless. But, it's another one of those where just try some stuff out, and like we've said so many times, myself and you over the last few weeks, just try stuff. And if it comes off, then it's something you can build on. But if not, I think we're not far from having to go back to the drawing board, and especially at our set piece. Line-out was a lot better, but I think that was because we were more sympathetic due to the weather. Ellis Jenkins came short a couple of times. We hit banker ball a lot. Fair play to Bradley Roberts. The first line-out he comes on for, in the dying minutes of a game, and he hits the back of the line-out first time. So I think that was a good introduction for him. But yeah, personally for me, and maybe a little bit more freedom to go and try things.
Well, let's talk about that Fiji game then for a couple of minutes. Obviously, Wales played them on the Sunday. We'll do a watch along on the channel here. Pivac said in his post-match press conference that there will be changes, that the plan was always to rotate ahead of this game, and that he's still going to stick by that. Do you expect wholesale changes, or are you thinking maybe there'll be 5-6 changes? What do you think?
I don't think we can afford wholesale changes, mate. I think, number one, the amount of players we've got in the squad will hinder that.
Well, is it a must-win? Is it a must-win game, this Fiji game, do you think?
It's getting to that stage where you feel like Pivac's going to come under intense pressure because, you look at Australia yesterday, although Scotland beat them, they played really, really well. I think there will be some changes, but I think it'll be more experimental. I think Priestland may come in. Maybe it'll be the same as we saw in the New Zealand game with Anscombe Scott and Priestland come off the bench, but there's definitely going to be an opportunity for the likes of him. I'd still like to see Thomas Williams at 9. I know I'm just picking individuals out now, but I think we've got to stick with as much continuity as we can because we haven't built anything yet, and if those players miss a game now between obviously finishing against South Africa last week and then taking on Australia in a fortnight's time, where are we going from there? If we lose against Fiji as well, then backs are really against the wall, and you've got players that haven't played in a fortnight. So I'd see a few little changes just to try and open up that sort of creative channel. Maybe get a bit of bulk into the forwards if possible, because I think we seemed a little bit light on options. Seb Davis, he's played all season in the second row for Cardiff Rugby, and now all of a sudden he's our back row replacement. So little bit of decision making to do in that respect. But yeah, I would say like 3 or 4 changes. Maybe Liam Williams comes back in. I don't really know. But yeah, 3 or 4 changes. But I think the majority of the squad need to start to put into place what Pivac wants to do.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be as many changes as they previously planned ahead of this game. I did actually watch some of that Fiji game against Spain. They were okay. They were typically, as you'd expect, Fijian, throwing the ball about, trying everything, trying to throw things about. But again, we should comfortably be beating this Fiji team, although we said that in 2007. Don't take me back. But I don't think there'll be as many changes as Pivac would have wanted to make ahead of this game. I do think that New Zealand game did rock us. I do think it did, and I think it potentially surprised Pivac, actually, where how quickly we fell away and how many issues there potentially are. But I would expect us obviously to go and beat Fiji. Myself and Ben will do a preview for that ahead of the game at some point later in the week. But I don't think there'll be as many changes as he'd want. I'd love to see Priestland given a go at 10, as you said. I think when he came on against the All Blacks, he showed what he could do. Anscombe hasn't really clicked yet, and I was quite surprised to see that Priestland actually was dropped from the match 23 last weekend. So I'd be interested to see if he comes in and maybe a couple of trying different things, but I really like the idea of someone different in the centre. Potentially move Tompkins to 13, maybe bring Ben Carter in at 12 or someone like that, give them a go. It is going to be a challenge against the Fijians. We're going to have to try and keep it a bit more organised and a little bit going through the basics, really, and then looking to build upon that. So overall, 2 games in, 2 defeats. What do you make of it so far? Do you think we are seeing any kind of progression, or do you think there's still a lot to be worked out from?
I think if you look in terms of the result, obviously that's a massive progression. We managed to keep it relatively close, whereas people thought South Africa weren't going to blow us out the water. So I think that's one big tick you've got to take off it. We've only scored 1 try in 2 games. That's a massive issue. Set piece line out is improving. Scrum, you'd be a little bit concerned for us, especially going up against an Australian pack that seem to have sort of on par scrummaging with the Scots yesterday. I don't think you can consider this a successful autumn so far, and I don't mean to sound negative, but if you look on paper at the things that have gone well so far, the things that have gone well, Tame Basham, Ellis Jenkins, and that's being brutally honest. You know, other than that, Bigger had an okay game, but again, he was just typically bigger, and it just seems to be that nothing seems to be clicking at the moment. I don't know whether it's because we haven't got that, like you mentioned, the continuity of the players that, you know, the likes of England, they've got their set team now, and very rarely do they deviate from their set starters. And we haven't got that yet. I think we're still trying to work out what our strongest 15 is. But yeah, I think there's definite opportunities for improvement, and I think we've started to see where they can come from. You know, when we do give the ball out wide, we can find space if we go through the phases and we've given ourselves confidence. But yeah, Fiji's going to be a game of discovery, I think. Again, try new things out, and then throw it all in the ring against Australia and chuck in the kitchen sink.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that you said there. I think it's been a frustrating autumn. And again, the way I describe this team is just a confused team, lacking identity, unsure of the game plan potentially. And that, at the end of the day, does come from the coaches. I'm certainly not Pivac out before someone says something stupid in the comments. I've seen people commenting on videos saying that Pivac out kind of thing. Pivac's not going anywhere until at least after the World Cup. He's not going anywhere. It's not happening. The Welsh Rugby Union don't tend to work hard. They like a coach there for a significant amount of time. But I think he needs to, you know, really stick to his guns and say, right, this is how I want to play. And at the minute, it seems about trying to keep scores respectful, trying not to be embarrassed. And I'd rather see us just say, right, let's just go for it. Let's just back ourselves and go for it. We tried that last autumn, yes, and I still don't feel like we fully got to grips with it. So it's tough because we're now 2 years out from a World Cup and things should be starting to fall into place. I watched Ireland against Japan. Yes, Japan were very, very poor, but I was really impressed by Ireland. I thought they were fantastic, actually. I thought they were so good. The way they were offloading, the way they were carrying into contact, Sexton controlling the game at 10. Obviously, they've got the All Blacks coming up, so that's a different test for them. But you know, I think Fiji, we should be beating Fiji, and I'd expect us to beat Fiji, and I think we will rotate a bit. But that Australia game then is a massive game because I don't think Australia were great against Scotland. James O'Connor at 10 didn't really work for them. But we know that they have been playing very well recently, bar that Scotland game. They've recently beaten South Africa, although with Quade Cooper, and he's not there now. But they've got quality across that pitch. And when Curtly Beale is anywhere near the Principality, we know there are going to be issues. So maybe we'll have to ensure that he doesn't get into the stadium, maybe. But there we go. But it'll be interesting to see. But that's where we're going to leave it there. That is our tactical review of the game between Wales and the Springboks. Plenty of positives to an extent, but lots to work on. Ben, thank you so much, mate, for jumping on once again. I'll leave a link down below to Ben's channel, so do go and check it out. Of course, don't forget to subscribe here on BS Rugby and check out the Fantasy League as well, where I'm doing pretty bad. But let's see if you can beat me. Ben's not doing too badly at all, but join in that ahead of next weekend's fixtures. Thanks for watching, folks.